crashed it 11 times in 1 year.
In 10 years' time, you'll think that's the best thing I've done.
Hey, this is Tim. This is Howden Originals, where we're travelling around the UK, chatting to classic car collectors and classic motor traders. Today, I'm joined by Roger Bennington from Stratton Motor Company. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you.
Motor industry, where did it all start for you?
Well, we go back a long way. I've been in the motor trade really all my life because my father was in the motor trade and he retired in '59 and I carried on with my apprenticeships after he'd retired. He bought a farm in Norfolk. I stayed in Essex and finished my apprenticeships, and sometime later I moved into Norfolk in about '65.
Okay, and when did Stratton Motor Company start? How did that start for you?
Basically, I was buying and selling sports cars from his farm, and in '72 this bill came up and we started Stratton Motor Company.
So is it just the UK that Stratton Motor Company deal with?
No, it's worldwide really, because originally, as you know, we were a new car distributor and we used to sell new cars in the UK, but about 10 years ago we were requested to keep the new car business. We had to build a new showroom and new premises, which was going to cost us about £6 million, and we decided that we wouldn't go that route. So we concentrated on the Heritage brand, and the Heritage brand grew very quickly, and it spread throughout the world. And over the 50 years that I've been in business here, we've made a lot of contacts worldwide, and so we draw work in from all over Europe, Saudi, New Zealand, Australia, America. So we enjoy a very good range of customers throughout the world.
I don't think I've spent any time with anyone whose mobile phone goes off more than yours, to be fair.
Yeah, okay.
And that's obviously all the different time zones you're dealing with. So if I was in the market for buying an Aston Martin, you know, I could go online, I could go to various different dealers. What makes it special for me as a collector? You know, what's important for me to look at, and what can you bring to the table?
Well, I think first of all you've got to consider what you're buying, and it's very important to have good advice from someone and pay someone to examine the car for you, because if you take a DB4 for example, you know, there's various stages you can buy a DB4. You can buy quite a cheap one from an auction. You can buy one privately, a little bit more, or you can pay quite a bit more money and have a properly restored car that's been done professionally. And those cars do make a lot more money. You know, you can buy a car maybe for £150,000 that's, you know, in a bit of a state, not really roadworthy, and people think, oh, well, I'll have that and I'll paint it up. But these cars, if you're going to restore them properly, the bodies have got to come off, the chassis have got to be shot blasted and repaired, and then they've got to be rebuilt. And it does cost about £300,000 to do one properly, but then you've got to remember you've got a car then that's going to last you 70 or 80 years, and you can pass it on to the next member of the family. So I think it's important, whatever you buy, that you take good advice on it.
And there's no kind of quick turnaround on investment here then, so you're really in it for the long game, are you? Well,
I think you have to decide what you're actually trying to achieve when you buy a classic car, whether you're actually buying it for fun, that you want to drive it, you want to do things with it. And again, you know, you must make sure that what you buy, you understand. For example, if you buy a fully restored car, which will probably cost you anything up to £450,000, but you've got like a brand new car, it won't be easy to sell that car for that money straight away. No. But in 10 years' time, you'll think, oh, that was the best thing I've done, because these cars go up. Because if you do a little graft on what it costs you, about £4,000, and what it's worth today, you know, there's this graph that goes up, but on the way up, it's always doing that.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got to make sure you have the thing properly insured. You need to take advice on that. It's important, I think, that every year that you have a valuation that you can present to your insurance company, and then you can talk about agreed values and things like that.
I think that's important. I mean, certainly, for an insurance on classic cars, yes, you can have a classic car and get agreed value on it. I think the thing to be aware of is just keep it up to date, because you can be in a position where you do an agreed value at, let's say, £50,000, and at the time of loss, the car might be worth £80,000, but you've then got an insurer tying you in at 50. So there can be arguments sometimes to insure it on market value. But just be aware of the market as a buyer, or indeed as a motor trader. You just need to be aware of, what kind of value is there. But I think the difficulty can be, the analogies you've used is spending £150,000, then spending another £150,000 getting it right. Does that immediately make it worth 300? That can be a very difficult question to get an insurer to agree to that. But it's something, we can help with. But do you have much pushback on that?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to having a proper valuation and an inspection on the car before you buy it. Because a lot of cars, people tell you that they've been restored, but they actually haven't. All they've done is they might have been retrimmed and they've been painted and they look very nice. But what's under the aluminium, that's what is important. So a proper restoration, the body has to come off. And that we have to get back to the chassis and repair that first. It's a waste of time trying to paint a car until you've done that. And that's the important bit. Then you've got a car for life.
Yeah. Okay, so why Aston Martin? I mean, it's obviously British. Why is Aston Martin is the mark that you've gone for, that you love? And
well, I've always been fond of Aston Martins, even as a kid. They used to come into the garage when I was, still at school, and I could see them. Used to go to the motor show, and we always used to go to the Aston stand. And I managed to get my first Aston in about 1968. And since then, I've never not had an Aston Martin. And now, I think there's over 200 on site today. So there's always plenty of Aston Martins here, and it's, I just love them all.
And have you got a favourite? Have you got a favourite model?
They're all favourites.
A very good answer. And how about, skills? How do you get young people involved in the industry? Because
that's a very difficult thing. We're very lucky now. We're involved with at Bicester. There's a heritage centre there, and they are looking for technicians, mechanics that actually want to train. Because at the moment, if you go to a car manufacturer like Aston Martin, they do run training schools that we can send people to, but they're only teaching them about current day stuff, plug in and play, where you plug the computer in, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, replace that, and that's what they know. But what we need is heritage mechanics that can understand plugs and points, distributors, and get back to basics, to take a starter to bits, to take a dynamo to bits, to repair and put it back together. And that's what the current technicians don't do, and they're not trained to.
Yeah. That's the Heritage Skills Academy, isn't it? So I think they've got a base in Bicester, but also in Brooklands.
They have, yeah.
And I think the other thing is transferable skills, isn't it? Because if you get a car in, you can't just say, right, you just do that bit. There's got to be some, you've got to be doing fabricating, you've got to be able to do coach trimming, you've got to be able to do...
Bicester now are offering, we've got one on bodywork now, and they're training them to do aluminium shaping. Because all the wings are made out of a flat piece of aluminium for a car. They're just hammered into shape, and we're very lucky. We've got a close working relationship with that establishment, and we've got 3 apprentices now coming on, and our plan is to take apprentice on, new one every year. So over a 5-year period, we've got people coming every year that are going to be fully skilled.
That's fantastic. So we've squared off the future of the cars, and we've squared off the future of the skills. So global market, obviously there's a lot of UK collectors. Where do you see the market moving across the world? Where is there really keen interest on classic cars at the minute?
Well, it runs around because obviously with recessions and financial climates changing, when you're doing well in the UK, you may not be doing well in the continent. And then when it slows down in the UK, suddenly it perks up somewhere else. So you just have to work with the flow and just keep it all running. But we're lucky. We've been doing it for a long time. We've got a lot of contacts throughout the world, and we're always getting good inquiries, and cars come from all over the world to be looked at and worked on.
So is the UK a real draw globally for, looking after classic cars? Is that part of what makes it great here, that we can export that skill wherever?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like motor racing, really, because if you look at the motorsport, lots of the major Formula One teams are actually based in the UK. And we have a huge amount of skill in the UK in the motor industry. And it's worth encouraging apprenticeships to do that, because in years to come, there won't be the people that understand how the earlier type cars run when we're doing electric and alternative fuels and fuel injection and all that sort of stuff. There'll be always a job for those guys that are experienced.
And it's all about buying, not buying cheap. It's buying something quality and not necessarily always buying new. And you can apply that to anything, can't you? It's not just cars. You can.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got I always go back to either a DB4 or 5 or a 6. I mean, what they cost new in their day, brand new, like a 6 was about £6,000. When you consider what they're now worth, it's worth investing the money in those cars to get them properly, because they're always going to go up, and people want them, because they're restricted in numbers. If you go to other marques where they're made in volume, you haven't quite got that niche. But if you're looking at marques that have got restricted numbers, like we go to Aston's and we go, well, there was only 70 of that convertible made. So that's a valuable, and that one is the ex-motor show car. So immediately, it makes that car a little bit more valuable than another one.
So Roger, you've mentioned obviously not selling new cars anymore. Have you got any stories about back in the day when you did sell new cars?
Yeah, we had a lot of fun selling new cars, to be honest, and we used to run the motor shows. There was only 6 dealers back in the 80s. And I can remember some real fun times that we had at the motor shows. And I remember selling a lot of Lagondas to the Arabs. And I remember one particular person that I got to know quite well. His assistant rang up one day and said, His Highness is arriving in London this week, and he'd like to see a Lagonda. Could you bring one up? And I said, yes, of course. Drove down to London and pulled up outside I think it was the Hilton at that time that we were staying, and it was all arranged. There was a man waiting, and we drove in. He said, drive up to level 4 on the car park. So we drove up to level 4, and there's not hardly any cars on it. And he says, all right, we've got the whole floor. So the first thing you've got is the whole floor of the car park, and then His Highness is busy at the moment, but he's reserved you a room, whatever you want. And if you want to order dinner or something, he's going to be tied up for a little while. We'll give you a call when he's ready. Anyway, there I was, watching a bit of TV, waiting for him. Suddenly, a knock on the door. His Highness is ready. He's coming to, you shoot out, jacket on, and race down the corridor. And there's this entourage going down the corridor, following him in his white robes and everything. And we come to the car, and the car's in the middle of the car park. Hardly any cars there at all. We walk round the car, and he looks at it, and yes, I like it. Yes, I'll take it. And there's no mention of money, and he just goes like this. And someone comes over with a case, and you open the case, and it's full of cash. There's enough cash. And then he says, "Thank you very much," and he starts to walk out towards the door. He says, "Oh, Mr. Roger, tomorrow can you bring me another one?" And then he would disappear. And you think, oh, we've done that deal, we shut the case, and off you go. You just walk down the stairs and jump into a taxi, and I can't remember what the prices were then. They're about 80 or 90 grand for a Lagonda. And you get into the car, you get into your taxi, jump on the train and go home. And I thought nothing of it, And then when I got home, I thought, actually, it's a bit silly taking all this money, So the next time, I had a man pick me up, and then the next time I thought, oh, actually, I'm going to see if I can pay this money into a bank. Sold him another car. He looked and he said, yes, okay, same procedure. The money came in a case. And I said, sir, you wouldn't mind if I borrowed a couple of your gags? I'd like to walk this down and put it into the bank. Yeah, no problem. You go. And we went down to the bank, and I can't remember what branch. I think it was a Lloyd's Bank, actually, with this case, up to the counter, presented this case to the girl behind there. We just casually opened it, counted it all up. What's your bank details? And we paid it in. And it was so easy to do. Could you imagine doing that today?
I mean, it just wouldn't happen, would it? You'd have all sorts of people checking up on you, paying in lumps of cash. That's an amazing story.
We used to do it all the while, you know, and I had a nice collection of briefcases over the years.
Oh, you got to keep the cases as well.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Roger, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today on Howden Originals. I really appreciate your time. You're a very busy man. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.